Okay. Aftermath of the breakup. But it would be a lie. It was never a constant thing. But I but did I think of her with a certain malevolence in the aftermath of the breakup? Yes. There were long and sleepless nights when I thought she deserved something bad, maybe really bad, to happen to her for the way she hurt me. It dismayed me to think that way. But sometimes I did. And then I would think about the man who went into her house with his arm around Linda Gray and wearing two shirts. The man with the bird on his hand and a straight razor in his pocket. In the spring of 1973, the last year of my childhood, when I looked back on it, I saw a future in which Wendy Keegan was Wendy Jones, or perhaps Wendy Keegan Jones, if she wanted to be modern and keep her maiden name in the mix. There will be a house on a lake in Maine or New Hampshire, maybe Western Massachusetts, filled with the clatter and yell of a couple of little Keegan Joneses or Jonesies, a house where I wrote books that weren't exactly bestsellers, but popular enough to keep us comfortably and were very important, well reviewed. Wendy would pursue her dream of opening a small clothing boutique, also well reviewed, and I would teach a few creative writing seminars, the kind gifted students V to get into. None of this ever happened, of course. So it was fitting that the last time we were together as a couple was in the office of Professor George B. Nako, a man who never was. In the fall of 1968, returning University of New Hampshire students discovered Professional Nako's office under the stairs in the basement of Ham, eh, Hamilton Smith Hall. The space was papered with fake diplomas, peculiar watercolors labeled Albanian art, and seating plans with such names as Elizabeth Taylor, Robert Zimmerman, and Lyndon Beans Johnson penciled into the squares. There were also posted themes from students who never existed. One I remember was titled Sex Stars of the Orient. Another was called The Early Poetry of Sethulhu. And an analysis. There were three standing ashtrays. A sign taped to the underside of the stairs read, Professor Nako says, the smoking lamp is always lit. There were a couple of ratty easy chairs and an equally ratty sofa, very handy for students in search of a comfy makeout spot. The Wednesday before my last final was unseasonably hot and humid. Around 1 in the afternoon, thunderheads began to build up, and around 4, when Wendy had agreed to meet me in George B. Nako's underground office, the skies opened and it began to pour. I got there first. Wendy showed up 5 minutes later, soaked to the skin, but in high good humor. Droplets of water sparkled in her hair. She threw herself into my arms and wriggled against me, laughing. Thunder boomed, thunder boomed, thunder boomed. The few hanging lights in the gloomy basement hallway flickered. Hug me, she said. That rain is so cold. I warmed her up and she warmed me up. Pretty soon we were tangled together on the ratty sofa, my left hand curled around her and cupping her braless breast, my right far enough up her skirt to brush against silk and lace. She let that one stay there for a minute or two, then sat up, moved away from me, and fluffed her hair. Enough of that, she said primly. What if Professor Nako came in? I don't think that's likely, do you? I was smiling, but below the belt, I was feeling a familiar throb. Sometimes Wendy would relieve that throb. She had become quite expert at what we she had become quite expert at what we used to call a through the pants job. But I didn't think this was going to be one of those days. One of his students then, she said, begging for a last chance, begging for a last chance passing grade. Please, Professor Nako, please, 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 I'll do anything. That wasn't likely either, but the chances of being interrupted were good. She was right about that. Students were always dropping by to put up new bogus themes or fresh works of Albanian art. The sofa was makeout friendly, but the local wasn't. Once maybe, but not since the understairs nook had become a kind of mystic reference point for students in the College of Liberal Arts. How was your sociology final? I asked her. Okay, I doubt if I aced it, but I know I passed it, and that's good enough for me, especially since it's the last one. She stretched, fingers touching the zigzag of the stairs above us and lifting her breast. Most interestingly, I'm out of here in, she looked at her watch, exactly 1 hour and 10 minutes. You and Renee? I had no great liking for Wendy's roommate, but I knew better than to say so. The one time I had, Wendy and I had a brief, bitter argument in which she accused me of trying to manage her life. That is correct, sir. She would drop me at my dad and stepmom's, and in 1 week we're official Fellini's employees. She made it And in 1 week, we're official Fellini's employees. She made it sound as if the two of them had landed jobs as pages at the White House, but I held my peace on that too. I had other concerns. You're still coming up to Berwick on Saturday, right? The plan was for her to arrive in the morning, spend a day, and stay over. She'd be in the guest bedroom, of course, but that was only a dozen steps down the hall, given the fact that we might not see each other until fall. We might not see each other again until fall. I thought the possibility of it happening was very strong. So, what does Devin mean by it? Does he mean like fucking, like having sex, intercourse? Possibility of it. And is this like him thinking back, or is this him like in the moment, present moment? I'm confused. Possibility of it happening was very strong. Of course, little children believe in Santa Claus, and UNH freshmen sometimes won a whole semester believing that George B. Nagel was a real professor, teaching real English courses. So George Nagel was not real? Damn, I'm confusing myself. Absoluto. She looked around and saw no one and slipped a hand up my thigh. When it reached the crotch of my jeans, she tugged gently on what she found there. Come here, you. So I got my through the pants job after all. It was one of her better efforts, slow and rhythmic. The thunder rolled, and at some point the sigh of the pouring rain became a hard, hollow rattle as it turned to hail. At the end, she squeezed, heightening and prolonging the pleasure of my orgasm. Make sure to get good and wet when you go back to your dorm, or the whole world will know exactly what we were doing down here. She bounced to her feet. She bounced to her feet. I have to go, Dev. I've still got some things to pack. I'll pick you up at noon on Saturday. My dad's making his famous chicken casserole for supper. She once more said, absolutely, like standing on her tiptoes to kiss me. It was a Wendy Keegan trademark. Only on Friday night, I got a call from her saying that Renee's plans had changed and they were leaving for Boston 2 days early. I'm sorry, Dev, but she's my ride. There's always the bus, I said, or already knowing that wasn't going to work. I promised, honey. I promised, honey. And I promise, honey. And we have tickets for Pippin at the Imperial. Renee's dad got them for us as a surprise. She paused. Be happy for me. You're going all the way to North Carolina, and I'm happy for you. Happy, I said. Roger Wilco. That's better. Her voice dropped, became confidential. Next time we're together, I'll make it up to you. Promise. That was a promise she never kept, but one she never had to break either, because I never saw Wendy Keegan after that day in Professor Nako's office. There wasn't even a final phone call filled with tears and accusations. That was on Tom Kennedy's advice. That was on Tom Kennedy's advice. We'll get to him shortly. And it was probably a good thing. Wendy might have been expecting such a call, maybe even wished for it. If so, she was disappointed. I hope she was. All these years later, with those old fevers and deliriums long in my past, I still hope she was. Love leaves scars. I never produced the books I dreamed of, those well-reviewed, almost bestsellers, but I do make a pretty good living as a writer, and I count my blessings. Thousands are not so lucky. I've moved steadily up the income ladder to where I am now, working at Commercial Flight, a periodical you've probably never heard of. A year after I took over as editor-in-chief, I found myself back on the UNH campus. I was there to attend a 2-day symposium 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 on the future of trade magazines in the 21st century. During a break on the second day, I strolled over to Hamilton to Ham ha, ha, Ham to ha, Hamilton. Why is it so hard to say Hamilton? To Hamilton Smith Hall on a whim and peeked under the basement stairs. The themes, celebrity-studded seating charts, and Albanian artwork were gone. So were the chairs, the sofa, and the standing ashtrays. And yet, someone remembered. Scotch tape to the underside of the stairs, where there had once been a sign proclaiming that the smoking lamp was always lit. I saw a sheet of paper with a single type line in print, so small I had to lean close and stand on tiptoe in order to read it. Professor Nako now teaches at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. So is Professor Nako a real person, or is he like made up person in the story? Or are they like an actual professor? You gotta be trolling. Well, why not? Why the fuck not? As for Wendy, your guess is as good as mine. I suppose I could use Google, that 21st century magic 8-ball, to chase her down and find out if she ever realized her dream, the one of owning the exclusive little boutique. But to what purpose? Gone is gone. Over is over. After my stint in Joyland, just down the beach from a town called Heaven's Bay, let's not forget that. My broken heart seemed a lot less important. Mike and Annie Ross had a lot to do with that. My dad and I ended up eating his famous chicken casserole with no third party in attendance, which was probably all right with Timothy Jones, although he tried to hide it out of respect for me. I knew his feelings about Wendy were about the same as mine about Wendy's friend Renee. At the time, I thought it was because he was a bit jealous of Wendy's place in my life. Now I think he saw her more clearly than I could. I can't say for sure. We never talked about it. I'm not sure men know how to talk about women in any meaningful way. After the meal was eaten, and the dishes washed, we sat on the couch, drinking beer, eating popcorn, and watching a movie starring Gene Hackman as a tough cop with a foot fetish. I missed Wendy, probably at the moment listening to the Pippin company sing Spread a Little Sunshine. But there are advantages to the two-guy scenario, such as being able to belch and fart without trying to cover it up. The next day, my last at home, we went for a walk along the discussed railroad tracks that passed through the woods behind the house where I grew up. Mom's hard and fast rule had been that my friends and I had to stay away from those tracks. The last GS and WM freight had passed along them 10 years before, and weeds were growing up between the rusty ties, but that made no difference to Mom. She was convinced that if we played there, one last train, call it the kid eating special, would go bulleting through and turn us all to paste. Only she was the one who got hit by an unscheduled train. Metastatic breast cancer at the age of 47. One mean fucking express. I'll miss having you around this summer, my dad said. I'll miss you too. Oh, before I forget, he reached into his breast pocket and brought out a check. Be sure to open an account and deposit it first thing. Ask them to speed the clearance if they can. I looked at the amount, not the 500 I asked for, but 1,000. Dad, can you afford this? Yes, mostly because you held into your Carmen's job, and that saved me having to try and make up the difference. Think of it as a bonus. I kissed his cheek, which was scratchy. He hadn't shaved that morning. Thanks. Kid, you're more welcome than you know. Hun- he took a handkerchief from his pocket and wiped his eyes matter of factly without embarrassment. Sorry about the waterworks. It's hard when your kids go away. Someday you find that out for yourself, but hopefully you have a good woman to keep you company after they're gone. I thought of Miss Shaplaw saying, kids are such a risk. Dad, are you gonna be okay? He put the handkerchief back in his pocket and gave me a grin. Sunny and unforced. Call me once in a while and I will be. Also, don't let them put you to work climbing all over one of their damn roller coasters. That actually sounded sort of exciting, but I told him I wouldn't. But I never heard what he meant to say next. Advice or ad admon or admonition. He pointed. Will you look at that? 50, 50 yards ahead of us, a doe had come out of the woods. She stepped delicately over one rusty GS and WM track and into the railroad, where the weeds and goldenrod were so high they brushed against her sides. She paused there, looking at us calmly, ears cocked forward. What I remember about that moment was the silence. No bird sang, no plane went droning overhead. If no plane went droning overhead. If my mother had been with us, she'd have her camera and would have been taking pictures like mad. Thinking of that made me miss her in a way that I hadn't in years. I gave my father a quick, fierce fierce hug. I love you, Dad. I know, he said. I know. When I looked back, the deer was gone. A day later, so was I. When I got back to the when I looked back, the deer was gone. A day later, so was I. All right, that would be it for today. So this one really confused me. So basically, so Devin is, I don't know if he was reminiscing or he was actually in the present moment, but it's his last day back home before leaving for, is it spring break, or before leaving for spring break down to Boston. Not Boston, it's Boston, right? Yeah, down to Boston, and he's just like recalling the events of what happened. That's basically what I got from this. But yeah.